Joining us this morning, Rachel Fiset. She's been following the trial since the very beginning with us. Good morning to you. So how does this COVID positive, these two jurors now being excused, you've got the alternates coming in, impact this case? The defense seemed to think they wanted to delay, they wanted to keep these two jurors on the case. How does this change things?
They had seated 6 alternates, so now they have used 2. So the biggest hope you have here right now in order to get a verdict that will stick is that the COVID did not spread to the other jurors, because there are not 12 alternates that you can come place in. So I think that's the biggest deal, is that you only have a limited amount of alternates, and you just hope that the other jurors that are seated do not get sick. But that's why they're there. I think that's why they're 6. It's a long trial. You want to not have to stop the trial, declare a mistrial, postpone testimony. And so the judge had this in mind when seating the jury.
Okay, so at this point, the prosecution is preparing to wrap. They've been bringing witness after witness, a lot of them bringing forth the evidence for the jury that they have gathered over the last year. Have they done a good enough job, the prosecution, to convince a jury that the guy responsible is sitting in that courtroom?
Such an interesting question, Marni. And I really do think that this trial, the way that we are all seeing it, could go either way. The prosecution has done a good job in presenting various evidence that would put him at the scene, raise enough questions as to motive. They would show that he had the guns, he had the means, the timing works in the way the prosecution is presenting it. The cell phone data is there in their favor. They have a lot of evidence, both circumstantial and some direct, right there in their favor. However, the defense continues to put holes in every single witness that the prosecution presents, and they are not really presenting another theory of death. They are just putting enough holes into the prosecution's case that may give rise to reasonable doubt. This is a really tough call the way we see it right now.
Do you think that one of the most damning pieces of evidence that the prosecution has put forth for the jury is this Snapchat video, where you now have 5 people who know Alec Murdaugh very well who say, I'm 100% confident that is his voice at the crime scene when he said he wasn't there?
I think that's their best piece of evidence, and it is the most controversial because they don't have an explanation for it other than, no, that's not what you hear. That's not my voice. So I think that is the biggest focus that the jury will have when they go back to deliberate, is that they may not be able to explain away his voice on that video, other than to say, the defense, says he just wasn't there. Okay, well, there's 5 people testifying that that is his voice, and that would put him on the scene. And if he's lying about being in that video, he may simply be lying about the whole thing. I think that's the number one thing that the jury's thinking about.
I had a person who was in the courtroom join me last week, and she described the jury hearing the financial crimes that Alec Murdaugh is charged with presented to the jury, and she said they responded in disgust. They were visibly disgusted to hear that he is accused of stealing from his colleagues, stealing from his clients, upwards of $10 million. Smart move for the prosecution to try to bring in this motive, this theory that this was the reason he carried out the crimes.
The ruling that the prosecution could bring that in is such an advantage to the prosecution, because they are both providing motive, and there's no way for the jury not to think at that point that this is just a really bad guy. And when they're deliberating, even though they're not supposed to think, because he committed financial crimes, he could have committed murder, but it is almost impossible for people to be drawing those lines in their mind, particularly when it gives him a motive for committing that murder. So it's inextricably tied, and people's brains have a very hard time distinguishing one crime from the next. So yes, that was a huge ruling in favor of the prosecution. And if they make the best of it in their closing argument, putting it all together, I think they have a strong chance of getting a conviction.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.